For those of you that don't know me, my name is Mark Castellina. I've been frequently referred to today as, are you Margaret's husband? So if you know Margaret, that's my connection. We've had 2 kids born with cystic fibrosis. Many of you know our story, but our daughter Jenna, she lost her battle to cystic fibrosis, moved up to heaven 13 years ago at the age of 13. And our son Eric is 27, doing well, recently married, going on 2 years, career in finance. Occasionally beats me in golf once in a while, and is a candidate for the triple. So we are praying with everyone, and we're excited about that. So today's format is taken from the ESPN program with the same acronym, PTI, which is Pardon the Interruption. So we know we're talking about some heavy stuff here, right? Gifting, stock, and individual, and legacy. So we want to try to make it a little bit fun, a little bit exciting. So pardon the interruption if you don't watch it, and I don't watch it, to be upfront with this, is long-time sports writers Tony Kornheiser and Mike Wilbon debate and discuss the hottest topics of the world of sports. If you aren't familiar with the concept, it's fast-paced. Every person gets a certain amount of time on the clock, and they have to deliver their message within that time. So we'll see the topics on our screen, and we'll see a countdown clock going. Exciting, right? Yeah. We're going to see how this all works out. At the end of today's discussion, though, we hope you can solve a couple of different things that we want you to understand. Our goals are, 1, to define individual giving, use terms that may be new for some of you, like targeted giving initiatives, describe various ways donors can give to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, gain a comfort level on legacy planning, define the role of an individual giving chair, and hopefully leave with an idea of how you can help grow our individual giving program. Before I introduce our panelists, though, we have a special guest today that I would like to take a moment to introduce. Joe O'Donnell has been just so instrumental in moving the goals of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation forward. Joe lost his son, Joey, back in 1986 at the age of 12, and has stayed passionately committed to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation for 4 decades. He's here today because the individual giving program, we had a program run a few years back called Milestone 1 and Milestone 2, where Joe raised over $250 million. Probably one of the most significant impacts Joe made on my life was shortly after Jenna moved up. We were here at one of our VLC conferences, and Margaret and I walked in and obviously devastated. And Joe spotted us from across the room and ran up to us and said, I am sorry to welcome you to a club that no family should ever have to be part of. And he showed us that day how to continue moving forward with such grace and such courage. So Joe, thank you for your personal impact on my life and for the impact on CF Foundation. Would you just please share a few words with us? Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. I mean, that's, I've never been described as having grace before. Once in a while, courage, but never grace. So thank you for that. I'm going to keep that. I had no idea I was going to be speaking at this until I got here. I could talk all day. Am I on the clock, by the way? Because I'll trade some minutes. I can do this in 1 minute and save some minutes for some other speakers. Look, fundraising, Mary Beth just said to me, what's the most important thing in individual giving, group giving, corporate giving, and she then, as is her wont, answered her own question. And I said, so what's the answer? And she said, giving to, and we used to say this all the time when Rich Mattingly and I hit the road for years, decades ago, and recently. Which is basically people giving to people. That it's relationships. So I don't care if it's a football weekend game. It's people give to people. And what's amazing about this group, there's no other group in the world that's like this. You're part of a club, many of you in an unfortunate club, which we're digging our way ever so slowly out of. But there's no other charity. I see them all the time. They come in and see me, whether it's Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or anything else, and they say, how did all of you do venture philanthropy? How did that happen? That didn't exist 20 years ago, didn't exist 10 years ago. And the answer to that is relatively simple. I mean, basically, we redirected the entire organization from 30, 35 different organizations all over the country, all good people, all working on their own, no centralized anything, totally decentralized. And it took us 15 years to straighten that out. And until we did that, we had no progress, and we had no hopes of making this a organization that did in a universal way. We didn't have 3 states doing the exact same research, spending 3 times the money trying to get, because there was no communication. And once we straightened that out, it got better. So when you're talking about giving in today's world, I look at it back in the, Joey was born in 1974, so I've been interested in this charity for, just like all of you, for personal reasons. And then it got to be, oh my God, we can really change things. And it was so slow, and it was so hard because we were pioneers. And we started the old-fashioned way, doing games, doing individual giving in groups, and basically we moved on to the corporate giving, and we ended up during that period creating, a campaign. There had never been a campaign, and we started the first campaign. So cake sales, walkathons, all that was the first part of it. And we actually got it up to about $160 million, the old-fashioned way. Then we started Milestones. Milestones 1, which many of you I know remember that, our goal was $175 million. You might as well have said 3 zillion. But once we got started and people joined up, and I'm so thrilled to see that today, this weekend, is the largest number we ever had. We've moved out of the parochialism that we had by necessity. We didn't have a budget. So we went off and ended up with the capital campaign, that Milestones campaign. And we did a funny, it was about a year into it, we had the traditional pyramid, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with. And we had the very high, at the top of the pyramid, $1 million donors and up. And then at the bottom was participation, whatever you can give, nothing in the middle. And we did a kind of a funny thing. We extended term, so we'd go to, I can remember going to so many people and saying, we'd like you to contribute $250,000. And they'd be great people who were really into it, and I can remember their names, I see them. Many of them are still involved, and it's like 250 is too much. I don't have that kind of capital. And I remember saying, well, could you afford $50,000? Well, yeah, I can do that. Well, if we gave you 5 years to do that, would you do that? And we changed. I see a few of you nodding your heads, so you remember that. So people stretched, and they were credited with a $250,000 gift, or if it was 100 over 5 years, 20,000. Can you do 20? Can you do 10 and make a 50? So we created a middle part of that pyramid, and it had a lot of unintended consequences. I mean, that once people committed to that kind of money in that kind of term, they became lifetime members of our club. Now, I'm going back, that was 20 years ago. And we have the same people giving same money, getting used to doing that kind of thing. Again, we had an organization that I remain really proud of. I'm a volunteer, so I wanted no part of being on the board because I didn't want to be responsible for what I'd say. and that's the truth. But it turned out to be a smart thing because Rich and I went all over the country doing that. And so you break it down into different times. So early on, it was the old-fashioned cakes, and it's still. So many of you spoke today, and we're so familiar with all of you when we do in Massachusetts, when we do in the other chapters, we give the awards each year. You can see so many people doing so many things the old-fashioned way, and that's really important to keep the momentum and to keep the recognition of all these endeavors. And then the capital campaign, got people used to giving. It created a whole new group of donors. I remember the first year in that category, we raised $11 million. The first year in the middle. Now the campaign raised $175 million over 3 years. And the day that campaign ended, we started Milestones 2 the next day, unheard of. And we played off the success in those little incremental gains in the research labs, which fed all of our hopes and our optimism. So today, I think, given the fact we have $4 billion in the bank, and we are afraid, I know all of us are, we don't know what's going to happen. It could be 10 years, it could be 5 years. We're not done. We haven't finished yet. And we want to make sure that, we don't end up in 5 years with no money and almost there. So we have to continue. We have to continue doing what we're doing. And my opinion, one of the fundamental, keep the old-fashioned way and keep doing the participation things. Whether we run a campaign or not is a whole different story. I think we're not ready to do that yet, given the fact that we just recorded the amount of money we scored with the royalties. But the thing that makes the most sense to me is to really focus on legacy giving, which we've done some of, but usually not at our own initiative. So we've been doing that the last 6 months, Mark, a year, maybe a year and a half. Harvard does that very well. Many universities do that very well. We're going to be doing that better and better. And that number, that legacy thing will play into, if in fact, God forbid, we don't have this thing wrapped up within the next 5 years. Who knows? I mean, we do need to be ready, and we need to have money, and that giving on all of those different levels. So when you call it individual giving, it's at different categories. And I think legacy giving is, for a lot of people, is an opportunity to say, you know what? I don't know how long I'm going to live, but when I die, I'm going to make a difference, and I'm going to make a difference like all of you have all these years, and change things for so many people. So that's my take on. My time's up, I'm sure.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate those comments greatly. All of us on the individual giving committee have a tall order to match $250 million, so you guys better get started. With inflation, it's $500 million. I'd like to take a minute to introduce our panelists. We have John Bodorf from Greater Illinois Chapter, Individual Giving Committee Vice Chair and CF Dad. Nina Collins from Arkansas Chapter, CF Grandparent. Francis Feeney, South Florida Chapter, Individual Giving Committee and CF Dad. Gary McLinney, Maryland Chapter, Individual Committee, CF Dad. Paul Montenko, Orange County Chapter, Individual Giving Committee Chair and CF Dad. And Marilyn Hart, Oregon Chapter, CF Mon. We'd like to get started. We'd like to get started with Paul and Francis. You're up first on PTI. I'd like to tell us a little bit about individual giving and targeted giving initiatives. Gentlemen, you have 12 minutes. Uh-oh. Nope, you have 6 minutes.
Oh, my God.
Now
so
you're
much
back to
pressure.
12.
Okay, I'm not used to to public speaking, so if I mess it up, you can blame Peter Hodge. Peter's the one who got me involved about 15 months ago. So Peter said to me, Francis, you really should be more involved with the foundation. I said, Peter, I'm so busy. I've got so many things to do. I have so little time. And Peter said 3 little words that changed everything. Have another drink. We haven't discussed the underestimated power of alcohol yet. So, my wife Irina and I, we live in Boca Raton. Our youngest daughter, Stella, is 21 months old, and she was born with cystic fibrosis. And I say born with cystic fibrosis as opposed to has it, to sort of echo the perspective and sentiment that Mark gave us in his talk, that hopefully one day we'll be able to pass that perspective on to her, and she'll be able to pass that perspective on to her own children. That she was born with CF, but she doesn't have it anymore, and that's where we're all going. And it's very important as we go along that journey that we remember and thank and feel grateful as we do, and as echoed by Jackie and Drew, for the journey of the families who came before us, the families like the O'Donnells, and who really forged the path for everybody here, and who made all these advancements and developments available to all of our families here in this room. So many thanks to the O'Donnells and the families that forged that path. So what is individual giving? It's really gifts of major gifts like of $10,000 or more that receive no services or gifts in return, that are 100% tax deductible, and that often take the place of maybe a special event that you were thinking of running, or can be in addition to a donation in a particular event that you've already made. And individual giving comes in three main formats. It can come as a major gift, and that can be spread over maybe 2 to 5 years. And our family last year had the honor of being involved in the whole genome sequencing project, which took place at the CF Therapeutics lab in Lexington, Massachusetts. And a number of the donors that we had for that initiative chose to spread their major gifts over several years. So that was a great accommodation for the charity. And then the second type of way individual giving can take place is through the annual fund, and that can be from $1 to $9,999, and that can come in a number of formats as well. And you can do that either at your events or just with online donations, or however you prefer. And then, as Joe spoke about earlier on, you can do it through legacy giving, which through your will or looking into the future and pledging assets into the future for the benefit of the foundation. And the reason we do this, in whichever format you choose to be involved with individual giving, is because we want to support the message of the foundation. We want to support the cause. We also want to provide stewardship, and we want to be able to mentor and tutor people coming up alongside us, younger people coming up behind us, whether they be in our own family or a circle of friends. And we also want to give people the opportunity to do the right thing and feel good about themselves. I know that in our family, the best sense of achievement we feel is when we actually are able to make a donation or give of our time and resources that actually gives back to ourselves. So we also have, I think, a number of people here today from the foundation, our individual giving officers, and if you wouldn't mind just standing briefly and raising your hand so we could all see who you are. So these wonderful people want nothing more than to help you, to support you, and to try and work with you in any way they possibly can to help any individual giving initiative that you have be as successful and as rewarding to you personally as it can possibly be. Also, everybody on I'll take the liberty of saying everybody on this table here will also be very happy to work with you as well. Finally, before I pass it over to Paul, who's going to talk about targeted giving, which is very, very important, just want to emphasize that the main priority of the foundation is unrestricted gifts. And unrestricted gifts allow the organization, allow the foundation to pursue the priorities of the foundation. Also allow the foundation to pursue the types of research that is best funded through unrestricted giving. However, targeted giving is very, very important too, and so I'm going to let Paul take his 6 minutes, because I've got 5 seconds remaining, maybe, to go ahead and talk about targeted giving. Oh, sorry, 10 seconds.
You take 5 seconds of my time.
That's right. Reset the clock.
You know, it's really hard to follow Francis. Actually, it's hard to follow that accent. No matter what I say, it's not going to sound as important as what he said. But yeah, I'm here to talk about targeted giving, which is very important to me. And basically, targeted giving is an individual gift that is designated for a specific purpose. And the history of targeted giving is that, you know, several years ago, targeted giving was not encouraged. It was really not suggested, because the foundation felt that it was most important, as Francis just said, that you know, to have the unrestricted ability to use the money in the way that they felt was best, and that was very, very appropriate. But times have changed, and there are certain things that have happened, especially with the new modulators and the fact that there's so much excitement on the horizon for such a big part of the CF population. But there are specific groups that that really need specific help. And 2 of those groups are nonsense and rare mutation, people with nonsense and rare mutations, particularly important to me, as my daughter has 2 nonsense mutations, and also people who have had transplants or are going to have transplants. Those are 2 groups of people that are a little separate, in the sense that, you know, while we're all one team, there's subgroups of people in the cystic fibrosis community that have certain needs. And having the ability to target support for those groups is very important to them, but it's important to all of us, and it's important to the foundation in general, because we have the ability to attract people to make gifts that maybe would be less likely to make a gift to the general fund. Especially, we, you know, had the royalties from the Vertex drugs, and we have so many people who are benefiting and are about to benefit from these new medications. But as Joe said, it's about people giving to people. And I think all of us know someone who has a special need. I have a daughter with a special situation, you know, part of the 7%. But I think all of us know someone who have had a transplant, who probably will need a transplant, or who have nonsense or rare mutations. And the ability to ask for a gift specifically for those people is so powerful. I had an example, went to someone who hadn't been involved in the foundation for years, used to give a lot of money, big supporter. And I went to him and I asked him for support again, and I could see his eyes glazing over a little bit. And then I started talking about nonsense mutations, and about my daughter Stacy, and about the community of people who are most likely to have nonsense mutations. And all of a sudden he got engaged again, and by the end of the conversation he wrote a check, because it was people giving to specific people with specific needs. So as you're going out looking for either yourself to give a gift or for people to give a gift, think about that you can say, hey, you know someone who has a specific issue that the CF Foundation can address, why don't you give to that person? It's a much different ask than just, give the foundation money and we'll do the best we can with it. We love unrestricted gifts, but this is an incredible way to get support, again, from people who otherwise might not want to do that. Both these initiatives are very important, but as time goes on, there are going to be more initiatives because there's going to be more subgroups of people who need that, and bigger groups. I'm not sure what they're going to be necessarily, but we've got the infection initiative, and we've got other things that are happening. All opportunities to reach out to people and have them support the people that they care about. And to show you how important this is, several years ago, targeted research was not encouraged, not a big deal at all. Last year, 42% of individual gifts were targeted. That's pretty incredible. And the reason why we have done so well recently with individual giving is because we are asking for specific people to give to specific causes. So I really encourage everybody to think about that. If you want to get more information, or if you're interested in promoting targeted giving or giving a gift yourself, the IGOs who stood up a minute ago are happy to answer your questions. We are as well. And there's cards on your table as well that you can fill out your interest in targeted giving. And we will definitely get back to you, and together we can get to the point where we can create these individual gifts that are going to find a cure for everybody.
Thank you, Paul.
My chair, too.
Oh, did you get shocked?
It was a shock.
I don't want that to
At the
happen.
buzzer. That was exciting. Thank you, Paul and Francis, both for those comments. I think targeted giving can be very motivating, as Paul described. I'm trying to talk seriously up here. But, when we think about lung transplant, our daughter Jenna was waiting for a lung transplant that never came. And there's many out there today. We were talking from the stage today, someone who had a transplant and then, lost their battle shortly thereafter. So it's something that needs to be addressed. We need to be funding it, and I think it'd be motivating for people who want to contribute to those areas. And when we think about nonsense and rare mutations, for me, it's Stacy. That's who I think of. For me, it's not 10%, it's not 7%, whatever. It's Stacy. That's who we need to raise money for. And all of you have your Stacy. So next, I'd like to talk about annual fund. Nina will talk to us and educate us on annual fund strategies. Nina, you have 6 minutes.
We'll try to make that alarm not go off. Thanks, Mark.
What do
My
I do?
name is Nina Collins, and I'm a volunteer with the Arkansas chapter and a grandmother to a 3-year-old CF warrior, Sophia. I'm excited to talk to you today about a few of the strategies that you can use for your chapter to help propel their annual fund program forward this year. Annual fund matching campaigns are a gift under $10,000 and are promoted as an and gift. Great Strides and Annual Fund, Taste of the Finest and Annual Fund, Extreme Hike and Annual Fund. You can kind of get my point there. Annual fund matching campaigns have been a key strategy for growing the Arkansas chapter's annual fund program. A match is a financial pledge by an individual or a corporate donor and is an opportunity to generate new support and relationships for your local chapter's annual fund. A match can be made by a single donor, or multiple donors can be combined to offer a large match. The match typically launches after Great Strides and runs for a specified number of time. My husband and I are very compassionate about the annual funds matching campaign, as it is very near and dear to our hearts and that of our families. We have supported our local chapter's matching fund through a matching gift for the last 2 years, as well as Great Strides and the Taste of the Finest. We first became familiar with the matching campaign when Sophia was about 1 year of age. We were new to CF and we're trying to figure out a way how to get involved and how we could make a difference. We became aware of the national sponsor offering a matching contribution, and it spoke to our hearts. If we contributed $10, he matched $10, that equaled 20. If we gave $500, he matched $500, then that equaled 1,000. To us, that was inspiring, meaningful, and resonated with our cause. In 2018, there were 30 local annual fund matches across the country, totaling $580,000 for the CF Foundation's individual giving program. You can help this year by offering a match for your chapter, identifying and securing a match from your contacts, marketing and messaging a match to your network. The next annual fund strategy is the 65 Roses Club, which is the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation's sustained monthly giving program. The 65 Roses Club provides consistent, reliable support each and every month to the CF Foundation. There are just over 900 members of the 65 Roses Club, generating nearly $33,000 a month for the annual fund. We really are looking to increase the 65 Roses Club membership this year by 500. So you ask, why is the 65 Roses Club a strategy for annual fund? Sustained annual average contributions are higher than one-time gift averages. Sustainer retention rates are higher than one-time contributions. Together, these two data points make a 65 Roses Club member's lifetime value higher. These donors are giving more for a longer period of time, which also makes them planned giving prospects. If the 65 Roses Club interests you, you can help us by signing up for a member. Go to www.cff.org, give monthly. Mark and message 65 Roses Days, which this year will be June the 5th, 6-5. It's now being called 65 Roses Day. On this day, we'll tell the 65 Roses story to honor Mary Weiss and others like her in the CF community, as it is launched to deepen the effects of the 65 Roses program. The final strategy I'd like to remind you of is the Giving Tuesday. Giving Tuesday is a global day of giving driven by social media, celebrated on the Tuesday following Thanksgiving and the shopping events Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Giving Tuesday also kicks off the charitable season, which many focus on end-of-the-year giving. In 2018, the CF Foundation raised $355,000 on Giving Tuesday, a 77% increase from the year before. This year, Giving Tuesday falls on December the 3rd, so mark your calendars. You can help us and give by making a gift on Giving Tuesday. Sharing, this is a day driven strictly by social media, so forward the email you'll most likely receive from your local chapter to your networks and ask them to make a gift. Repost the social media message that will be posted by the CF Foundation and your local chapter so that your contacts can see that you are supporting the CF Foundation on Giving Tuesday. Thank you for letting me share a few of the annual fund strategies with you. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Mark to give the different giving vehicles you can use to support any of the individual giving programs.
Thank you, Nina. Appreciate that. I think the matching gift concept is really powerful for a lot of people. And beyond just a personal match maybe within a chapter, don't forget about corporate matching gifts. Many of us are working for companies that are willing to match the gifts that we give. I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about some of the other methods that you can give. There should be handouts on your table that talk about other ways of giving. We gladly will accept checks and piles of cash, so you always can drop that off to us. But there's other ways that you can give, that people will give. Not to get into too detailed on this, but the top three methods. One is an IRA qualified charitable distribution. Right, so anybody that is over 70 and a half and has an IRA or 401k, they're mandated to take a distribution out of that account. They have to do it. That money comes out and is taxable. You can, through this charitable deduction, you can take that R&D required minimum distribution and give it directly to a charity, preferably the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. You also can give highly appreciated stock. Many of us are donors that you know may have stock that has appreciated over time. They work for a corporation and they get stock on an annual basis. Some of that is appreciated greatly. They may want to sell it, for diversification or, sorry about that feedback, diversification purposes, whatever reason. They could instead give the stock. I got the thing. I got control of this thing. Stop that clock. they can give that stock directly to CF. They don't have to pay a capital gains tax. CF Foundation doesn't have to pay a capital gains tax, and the donor gets the deduction for the full amount. And also, there's some donor-advised funds. Because of the tax, some of these things have crept up because of the tax law changes. We're not asking anybody here to be a CPA or CFP, but if you start having some conversations that these things may pop up, we're hoping that it kind of triggers an idea that you say, maybe we should be discussing this further. You can meet with an individual giving officer, you can meet with one of our chair members, or even your executive director who can lead you to where you might want to go. So just keep in mind there are sometimes better ways to give for our donors. Another great way to give is through legacy giving. And John is going to take 10 minutes to talk about legacy planning.
Moving it down. Legacy giving is actually a relatively newly defined initiative for the foundation. It's something that we really didn't talk about. I've been working with the foundation now, or volunteering, for 36 years since my son was born, and I've only heard these words in the last year or two. And it's important to recognize that legacy giving is not a new way to raise funds for any kind of charitable foundation. Universities have been doing this and been doing it very successfully for centuries, very basically. It's really important for us to recognize that now, notwithstanding all the great science, all the great progress we've got happening, we're still in this for the long haul. It's still not going to happen, and we're not going to be out of business in the next 2 years. So Legacy Society and joining it and doing something is a way to make a long-term commitment to the foundation without writing a check, but demonstrating your commitment to the foundation and supporting it. I know my story was really kind of interesting. I reached the conclusion, soon after my son was born, that this is going to be a long haul. And when my wife and I were going through some of our estate planning, I designated some money to cystic fibrosis. The way that you join our legacy society is to do two things. One is do something, and you have to do it on your own. And the second thing is tell us about it. And it was really funny. I was when Amanda, who's our IG regional person, was talking about it. I said, "Well, I did that decades ago." She goes, "Well, now you're in the Legacy Society. Anybody wants to join? I got some ribbons for you right here." It is something that is very individual. There's no sense of urgency because there's no deadline to say the event's going to happen by this date, or I want it by the end of the year so I can get it in my numbers. It is very personal. You have to take action on your own. But I think one of the things that's important to recognize that it's not just a will, which most people don't look at their wills every year or even every 5 years. It's something that happens every now and then. There are a number of things you can do to support a legacy effort, and you can do very quickly, very easily, and you can do them right now. Things like if you have some CDs, you just simply designate the beneficiary upon your death as the foundation. Or the life insurance policy from work, or your personal life insurance policy, you just add them as a beneficiary. Those types of things where it's a beneficiary for current assets, and not necessarily a estate or will planning, are much easier to do. There's no lawyer involved, and you can do them quickly and easily. So we would really like to encourage you and join me in the Legacy Society right now that we decided this, because right now there's only 540 people nationwide in the Legacy Society. There's 640 people at this event. There's another 600, or probably some overlap, but there's about 600 board members. Those are just people that are fully dedicated to our cause, and it's be very easy for everybody in this room and everybody at this convention to take a few steps, then call your IG officer, and you're in it. It's very important for the long-term planning of the foundation to build this source of income. And it really only takes an ask, and I'm asking you. And this is a different kind of ask because there's no check to be written, but you do have to take some action. Right now, the other thing I was going to ask you is everybody go back to your boards and raise this. When I've been, especially in Chicago, I've been raising this or talking about it at our board level for the last 3 or 4 board meetings. And because there's no sense of urgency technically associated with it, it's almost like every board meeting I have to say something and then one person will go, oh yeah, I wanted to do something. It is a type of ask where you kind of have to be very repetitive. You have to keep going out and doing it and reminding people because it takes their personal action to make something happen. That's pretty much it for me.
Terrific. Thank you, John. We got 5 minutes back.
Yeah.
You know, when you talk about legacy planning, I think you did a great job in explaining all this. You know, everyone here, I bet you, has done some legacy planning. If everyone here or anyone has a 401k that you started at work, and when you clicked on it and asked, who do you want your beneficiary to be, you're doing legacy planning. We're not asking much more than that, just to take, as John said, that extra step. You know, I'm going to give it to my spouse, I'm going to give it to my kids. Oh, I'm going to include cystic fibrosis in my own legacy plan. So it's not this, doesn't have to be this big thing. It can be, right? We can get into trust and charitable remainder trust. We can get into a lot of complicated legacy planning, but it could be as simple as just adding a beneficiary on your 401k or retirement plan or life insurance policy, as John said. I'll share a couple stories with you. We have a friend who's been giving us, sponsoring us at probably about a $500 level for years, probably 20 years, to our Great Strides Walk, which is very generous. And we are so greatly appreciative that they continue to do that. Well, they let us know recently that they decided to include the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation in their legacy plan, and the amount that they wanted to give to us was $250,000. So you can see how some of this can leverage up. Now, they're both healthy and in their 70s, and God willing, they'll live a long, healthy life. But at some point, right, that gift will come. There's another gentleman that we're working with who's giving $50,000 annually out of his required minimum distributions. He's over 70 and a half and has to take those distributions, and he's decided to give 50 of that to us. And we just started opening up conversations with him about including this in the legacy plan. And if you think about this, that gentleman, there's so many people out there like this. He has a number in his head, right? He's when we asked, how long will you be giving this to us? He said, I'll be giving this to you for the rest of my life. Well, I'm sure in his mind, he's thinking 20 years or more. Well, if he were to pass away unexpectedly, his personal goals would not be met, right? He would not have contributed to the foundation to the extent that he wanted to. So I think for us, having these conversations with people allows them to think about this in a bigger position. Say, boy, if something does happen to me, I do want to make sure X amount goes to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. And we're not asking you to do this by yourself, but as these conversations come up, you can talk to any one of us or your IGO to assist. I'd like to transition into individual giving chairs next. Sorry. So Marilyn is going to be talking to you about individual giving chair and what that role plays in our program. Marilyn, you have 5 minutes.
Can I have those 2.5 minutes? Hi, I'm Marilyn Hart. I'm from Oregon. I'm the mom of a 31-year-old son in banking finance, and he's doing well, and we're very grateful. Just a slight orientation to how I came to individual giving. Early on, when he was little, like most parents of children with CF, we were very active in the Great Strides walks. Then we got familiar with the annual dinner. Then we did they weren't doing cycling back then. But eventually, as many young kids do, we weren't doing walks anymore. That was not cool. And so we stopped doing Great Strides. And we got very busy with our careers and raising our son and adopting our daughter. And so then very recently, we retired, both my husband and I, and we did a couple things real immediately. We reviewed our estate and joined the Legacy Society by adding that in after we were sure we'd taken care of our kids and our family. We joined 65 Roses, and then we went knocking on the local Oregon Southwest chapter and asked them to put us to work. Spent some time stuffing envelopes, supporting multiple Great Strides walks, and then received an invitation to take on the individual giving chair. That is about less than 6 months ago. So you are learning from someone who is a real novice with this. And I think this couldn't be better training, so I welcome you to this discussion. The Cystic Fibrosis Foundation asks that each chapter successfully recruit an individual giving chair to serve on its respective board. We call it an advisory board in our state. The primary role of the individual giving chair is to grow individual giving for the programs we have discussed today. Stewardship, a word you've already heard, is key to donor retention and renewed support for any organization. That is the heart of the relationship with your donors, to steward them, to care for them, to demonstrate our value and our gratitude to them. Through stewardship, your chapter can show how much we value the donors and grow the individual giving in both revenue and donors. We have an opportunity to think beyond just our initial engagement in the many ways our donors can potentially support the foundation longer term or in a greater capacity. And the term donor can include not just individuals, but also foundations, private or public, and corporations. And I would like to add small businesses because many of them are quite dedicated to special causes, and some of them become big businesses. So how does an IG, as we call short-term, individual giving chair, get started once recruited? Well, if you're lucky like I was, you get to meet with Paul locally as he came to Oregon with his wife and Amy and got to have a discussion with them. A very crucial first step is to meet with your executive director, partner with them and your volunteer advisory board, as well as the chapter team. You should be on a first-name basis with all of the team members in your chapter, as well as your board members. Collectively, with the IG chair as the lead, the team will work with the CF Foundation and the individual giving officer assigned to the region that you saw some of those folks in here today. Maybe all of them. I apologize if I don't know that. Working with these stakeholders, the chapter will develop a plan, a stewardship plan, and this plan provides direction for individual giving program and include the goals for major gifts, annual fund, legacy members for a given year or years. The chair will communicate goals and objectives for each area to garner board buy-in, report out on the progress at each board meeting, and be involved in the recruitment of annual fund match donors. Along with the strategic planning inherent in this role, the chair serves to educate the community on individual giving support opportunities. This could be as simple as reporting out at a board meeting and annual meetings and what are known as donor cultivation events, I think of my garden, to ensure the chapter is including messaging on all individual giving programs in its regular communications, targeted giving initiatives, 65 Roses Club, Giving Tuesday, Legacy Society membership, and so forth. And finally, the IG chair should support the annual priorities as determined by the National Leadership Council. And that is all I know about individual giving.
That's quite a lot.
Have Paul come.
Thank you, Marilyn. I'm sure you found, as I have, it's pretty rewarding.
It is.
Isn't
very
it?
important.
Margaret and I recently decided to join the Legacy Society, and I shared the story. I'm the individual giving chair, too, for our chapter, and just shared that with the board. And the next day, we had another board member join the Legacy Society. We have 2 more board members that also have verbally said that they want to get involved in the Legacy Society. Again, I have control. So next up, we all know this very well. We could not do what we're doing here without just a huge circle of friends and family. And we always want to be expanding that circle of friends and family. So Gary and John will take 12 minutes to discuss how we can find new friends. Gary?
Okay.
John?
Good afternoon. I'm a CF dad of a 28-year-old police officer in the state of Maryland who I'm so proud of. As a volunteer, one way you can help the foundation is to make friends for the foundation. Those friends may decide to volunteer, donate, come to an event, or just want to learn more about CF. We hope they'll do all those things and a little bit more. I'm sure you also want to grow your friends, your circle of friends who want to know more about CF. On everyone's table is this well-designed form that was made for us. This is kind of what caught my attention several years ago when I first became involved in individual giving. I came to my first VLC, I believe, it was in Washington. And just stumbled into a meeting on individual giving and was kind of hooked then because I felt I could make a bigger difference than what I was able to do for what I was currently doing in Great Strides. So in addition to chairing Great Strides, I thought being on the individual giving committee of my local chapter was some additional way to help. So when you go through this form, just think about a couple people in your life. Who would you call if your lunch appointment on Friday was canceled and you needed somebody to fill in? Who's your workout buddy? Who do you call when you're having a birthday party? Who do you call when it's your anniversary and you want to celebrate? Who at work is your best friend? Go through this and fill it out. We're not going to take these today. These are for you to take with you. And if you identify people that you need, please contact your individual giving chair to help you walk through this. This is going to be a pretty good circle of friends. Two ways that I've identified that you can help this circle of friends become more involved is when you look at your list, identify one to three people who you think would like to learn more about the foundation. Your chapter ED and individual giving officer would then love to join you at coffee for drinks after work to share the information about the foundation. What would you do if you have a lot more people involved? One of the things that we've started in Maryland with Fran's help is what they're now calling friend raisers, or what we used to call cultivation events. Usually a host that could be with you. You invite 15 to 20 people to your home for, like I said, a happy hour, cocktails, some hors d'oeuvres in the evening. Like any party, it's mostly mixing and mingling. There's often a short program. At ours, we had a CF doctor from Hopkins that gave a short little presentation. Somebody from your local chapter to share the mission, and just ask the guests to fill out a card if they're interested in learning more. Your chapter staff and IG officer will partner with you for this event. And speaking of fundraisers or friend raisers, that's I practiced this for weeks. Friend raisers, John can share about his experience.
Yeah, really quickly. We've done it once before. We actually have another one coming up on April 15th. But we simply have an event at my condo, and we happen to have a room big enough to hold 15, 20 people. And specifically send out invitations that say, we invite you to come to listen to whatever the topic is. The one on April 15th in our places on the lung transplant initiative. And Dr. Farrell, sorry, I keep forgetting his name, is coming to give us a chat with us. And we've done it in the past where we had someone else from national. The good thing about being in Chicago is that's a big enough city I can get some people to fly in for it. But what we found, which is really interesting, is there a really good opportunity to mine the data field, the database of old CF volunteers. I think it's interesting. There's a number of us on the DS who have older children rather than very young children. People burn out or whatever, and they've left the foundation, but they haven't stopped watching. And they hear what's going on. They know the exciting news. And we found these cultivation events to be really good to start drawing people back in. They want to hear the news. They want to hear what's going on. And this is a way to start maybe getting them re-involved, and if nothing else, just to get some people who are marginally already involved, more involved, without it being a fundraiser. It's a comfortable, intimate setting, as Gary said, with a little booze. Booze always helps things in fundraising event. And have a pleasant evening, and then you kind of follow up later to see if they can get involved, if there's something you can do. But people like the fact that we're not going to hit them up for a specific volunteer event. We're not going to hit them up for cash when they come. And those are very good, longer term, you know, they are cultivation events, although we've decided not to use that term anymore, I think, right? But I would strongly encourage you to do that at your local chapters if you can. We found them to be very successful.
Good. Thank you, John. Thank you, Gary. Why don't we give our panelists a round of applause? I think they've just done a great job. So there's a couple of things we hope you would do is, one, fill out your circle of friends card. That's for you to take, not to leave with us. But if you think about who you might want to expand your circle with. And there's also a interest card on your desk or on your table there. We're hoping you would fill that out and leave that with us so we can understand what your interests are, and we might be able to help drive that forward and help you. So we'd like to open this up for any questions or aha moments or success stories anyone might want to share. Joe?
Paul, you talked about restricted giving. This is a huge transformation. We're talking about restricted giving in universities. Still, the only way they've been able to get restricted giving is to tie it in. You mentioned lung transplants, and I think at the end of the day, unrestricted applies to the operating budget, and in universities, that's financial aid because they have to spend that anyway. So it's really not restricted. So the trend there is to tie it together in the university. It would be financial aid, it would be faculty salaries, it would be things like that that could be restricted, that are technically restricted, but basically are going to be spent in the operating budget. So in CF, I assume we'd have a lot of success tying the restricted giving to things we're doing anyway, which is our lung transplant program, things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a way for people to feel good that their money's going towards what they're interested in or what the person that they love needs. But yeah, these are things that the foundation is going to fund, administrative costs and research in general and so on. But the feeling that someone can get from giving to a specific thing is unique. I'm involved with a local community college back in Orange County, and with the foundation. And to give to the foundation, it's hard to get money out of me if it's not for cystic fibrosis. But they say, well, we want you to fund a scholarship for a student. And I'm looking at these students and I'm saying, you know what? I could fund a scholarship for a student because I see that student and it becomes very personal. And that's what targeted giving is all about.
Thank you. Any other questions or any questions from online?
We do have an online question, and that question is there a certain size gift required to join the Legacy Society?
No. Did you want to answer that, John? Or no, there's no. Yeah, there's no limit. We're not going to ask you. When John suggested that there's two things you need to do, you need to include us in your legacy plan, and you need to tell us that you're including us in your legacy plan. But we don't need to know the amount. We don't need to know if it's a percentage of your estate, a dollar amount. There is no minimum amount. We just want to know that you are engaged with us as far as the legacy plan. Good answer, John.
Yeah. You had a microphone.
I know.
Hi, my name is Mike Stansberry, and I'm from the glorious San Diego weather-bound chapter here. A couple of questions. In my small experience with individual giving, plan giving, if you will, one of the most important things that I've found is the follow-up after they have committed. And I'd like to get the panel, someone from the panel, what is your observations in terms of follow-up to make sure that donor, well, he went through some problems, the market dropped, and so he changed his will, but you guys don't have any way, I don't have any way, unless I'm in contact with them. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Trina.
I'm taking the answer because, and I give credit to my local staff person at the CF office. When I joined, especially the individual committee giving officer aspect, we've worked together to consciously. I get this list of people to call and/or email on a kind of somewhat regular basis, specifically to follow up, and oftentimes it's nothing more than thank yous. But stay in front of them. You know, I have to admit we kind of bifurcated by size. So if you're giving me $100, I may not call you. But we do consciously go after and say thank you to people. And what's really been interesting is that when I've sent out, either called and/or sent out thank you notes, how many people respond with notes that are 5 times longer than when I sent them. They want to hear from you, and they love the feedback. And it's the classic, a thank you goes a long way. When I've gotten people on the phone, I've heard their stories. I've heard their stories oftentimes of how they've drifted away from the foundation and came back, especially at the numbers, and/or they're brand new. I mean, I've talked to some young man recently who just moved to Chicago, and I called him to thank him and ask him to do something, and he couldn't do what I asked him, but he was wildly enthusiastic that I called him, wanted to get more involved, and so on and so forth. So some of it is traditional blocking and tackling at the individual giving committee, and a lot of it is about follow-up.
Just like John said, my situation is we have CF in our legacy plan, but I wasn't a member of the Legacy Society because didn't know it existed, until very recently. And that's why it's important that we have a Legacy Society, that we can keep track of the people who are involved in it. And that's why it's important for the people like yourselves or others that you know that if you're going to give to CF in your estate plan, that you become members of the society so we can keep track of those people, so we can thank them, and so that we can keep them updated on what's going on with cystic fibrosis, so that they stay engaged. And that's why it's a two-step process. One is to do it. The second is to let us know that you've done it.
I think you also hit on another question within that sentence, which was, can we change our plans? You said something about the person. The answer is yes. When you join a Legacy Society, you're not committed forever. You can change, as long as you're alive, you can change the plan. You can increase or you can decrease. I'm sorry, is there a question in the back there? Melody?
Hi, so Melody asked me to share this story. I'm the chair of the board in New Hampshire, Northern New England. And the first thing we did as a board, the first collective action we took was to commit 100% to the Legacy Society. It was great because it was something we could all do pretty easily and collectively as a new board that didn't have a lot of relationships with each other. And also as a board with various financial means, it was a way for us all to do something without having to disclose to each other what we were able or willing to do. So that was, for us as a new board, a really easy, nice thing to do.
That's fantastic.
That's pretty amazing.
Thank
100%
you.
board participation.
I know we're pushing up on the break, so we'll just take a couple more questions.
One here, and then Stacy.
We're willing to stay here as long as we want. Okay. All right. 2 more questions.
Hi, my name's Katie Ariye. I'm 16, and my high school has a requirement of community service hours. As far as educating people, does the foundation have anything where you can have a club at school that could provide people with community service hours so more teens can get involved and maybe push them to go to things like Teen Advocacy Day?
Yes. I'd reach out to your chapter. There's always opportunities for students to get involved in as volunteer hours. Maybe it's at a Gray Strides walkathon or supporting one of our galas or something like that. But I would reach out to your chapter. That will definitely help you with that. Last question?
I just had a quick question. I'm executive director in Austin, Texas, and y'all said that you didn't know about the Legacy Society until recently. How did you hear about it? I just want to know what might be the best method for getting the word out to our community? Was it a board meeting or a personal call?
We told each other. But I think board meetings are a great way to do it. And I see more and more people talking about it, and it's up to the chapters to get that word out. And there's chapter newsletters, and there's other communication forums that is just something that is such a great opportunity. Events like this, certainly, and just, talking to people, it's so easy to talk. It's so much, it's hard to ask for money. We do it because it's so important, but it's a lot easier to say, think about us in your estate plan, because you're not asking for an individual, check at the moment. So it's something that we've got to get the word out more and more, and I think that's certainly a major initiative for the foundation.
Well, again, thank you everyone for coming in. If anybody wants to come up afterwards, we'd gladly answer your questions directly. But thank you for your time and attention and all of your contributions.